If I could read you just a quote from the prosecuting attorney. What's happening down in Louisville, well, first of all, legally, Jason David Stinson has to go back to court on March 20th. He has a deposition scheduled in his civil suit for February 13th. It's hard for me to believe that as his lawyer, now that he's under criminal indictment, that his lawyer will let him show up at a deposition. But I will say one thing quickly about the Kentucky grand jury system, which I wasn't familiar with till yesterday, Rick. In Kentucky, you can request as the defendant to go in and tell the grand jurors your story. There are 12 grand jurors in Kentucky. 9 have to vote to indict. You can request, but it's not mandatory that you be allowed. So in this case, and normally you might not want to go into the grand jury, as you could imagine, because you don't want to have two versions of your story. But in this case, Jason David Stinson, the well-loved, you're right, football coach down there, they had a prayer vigil for him last week in 20-degree weather. Hundreds of people showed up. He requested, I want to go in front of the grand jury. I want to tell my story. And under Kentucky law, which strikes me as unusual, the grand jury does not have to listen to him, does not have to say, okay, we'll hear your testimony. It's up to the grand jury. And in this case, surprisingly to me, a New York lawyer, they refused to hear what David Jason Stinson had to say, which, again, strikes me as highly unusual. So they went ahead and just heard from other people and never heard from the defendant in this case. But I just do want to read two quotes from David Stengel, who is the prosecutor down there.
Go ahead.
He said that reckless homicide occurs when, quote, a person fails to perceive a risk that a reasonable person in that situation would have seen, and that person's actions cause a death. And when he's been, he's under great criticism down there for, indicting the local football coach. He said this past week, and this is from the Louisville Courier-Journal, which has been on top of this case from the get-go. He said, quote, this is not about football, this is not about coaches, it's about a trained adult who was in charge of the health and welfare of a child.
Let's face it, it goes beyond the football field, just common sense. 718-937-6666, let's get some callers here. Let's go over to Bergen County in New Jersey. DJ is standing by. DJ, you're a high school football coach?
Yeah.
DJ?
Yes, I am. High school football.
Go ahead, DJ.
Yeah, I'm here.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm a high school football coach in New Jersey, and fortunately for me, I grew up on Long Island, where there's an awful lot of rules on when you can and cannot be on the field.
Right.
Now, first of all, it's got to be a complete nightmare for every coach for something like this to happen, and it's on the top of your mind. It's top of your mind every single day when you walk on the field, regardless of the weather. We had a tragic situation in our conference last year where a young man he passed away during a football practice from a head trauma.
Correct.
So it's terrifying, and I don't have the answer, and I'm not defending anybody. Legislation is very important, but that's still not the answer to everything. One of the things I would throw out there, and again, I would, if you could get a guy on from Long Island, he could tell you a lot about when they can and cannot be on the field. Much of it has to do with the physicals that are given to these children and what we do and do not know about them when they come on the field. Now, I'm not saying that's related to the Kentucky case, but I don't know how thorough the physicals are.
Well, it might be.
Some of the things that happen with these young fellas, and then with the young ladies playing other sports, it's frightening. You just don't have enough information about it.
DJ, I'm going to let Steve comment, but thank you for the call. And I agree with you. Yes, all the kids have to go through high school physicals, and every physician will tell you there are always things that are going to slip through the cracks. And again, as a high school coach, a kid gets hit in a football game. Who knows what could happen? We had that death last fall of a high school football player in Jersey. You just never know. And you're putting the coach on the line for this? Steve, this seems like an awful big responsibility to put on any high school football coach to even if they go by other rules, they still have real issues.
Well, I agree, Rick, and the physical might be important in this case for two reasons. Unbeknownst to the coaching staff, Max Gilpin was taking creatine, and it'll be an issue as to when or whether he stopped. And as you know, creatine can lead to dehydration, can lead to problems. According to the parents, he had been taking it and stopped a month before practice, and the coaching staff supposedly knew nothing about it. But what the coaching staff did know about, on Max Gilpin's physical, it was noted that he's taking Adderall. You could probably speak better than I about Adderall, but it's to help with attention deficit disorder.
Right.
And this, too, could have affected him. So you have a kid where at least they knew he was taking that, would that have changed the way they viewed him on a 94-degree day running wind sprints for an excessive period of time? Well, the argument can be made that, yes, they should have been more aware. And that's going to be, I assume, part of the argument, but also from a defense perspective, from the coach's lawyer's perspective, how can you hold him accountable if he was taking creatine and you knew nothing about it?
All right, Steve, let me stop you there. We'll come back, take more calls and comments. 718-937-6666 about this unusual criminal case down in Kentucky and the high school football coach. We're talking this morning with Steve Kallas about this case down in Kentucky. Steve, let's get back to some of our callers. Let's go to Steve in Princeton, New Jersey, who was a high school football coach as well. Good morning, Steve. You're on the Fan.
Good morning, everybody. This is such a terrible, terrible thing.
Yes, it is.
A couple of things I'd like to know about, if we have the answers. Was the trainer around? Were the kids wearing full equipment when they were sprinting? There are some things that a coach can do to make things a little bit better throughout the course of practice. And I'll tell you, after 28 years of coaching, I'm not a big believer in the double session anymore. And you know what? Whenever my kids condition, helmets off, shoulder pads off. If it's too hot, we back off. Water immediately. And the other thing, too, is this happened in practice when a coach can control the time that he practices. He can cut it short. He can eliminate conditioning. But what happens if this is a game with the same weather conditions? Then what happens?
That's a good.
Who's in control?
Steve, those are excellent points. Steve Kallas, yeah, I mean, this really opens up a real Pandora's box for any high school coach, because as our Princeton coach says, you know, what happens if it's 95 degrees on a blistering hot day, and the coach has no control over that. And I think you did said, Steve Kallas, that there was a trainer right on the scene when the kid collapsed, correct?
Well, the athletic director was right on the scene. You know, as a matter of fact, now that Steve brings it up, I have not seen anything where a trainer went right there, but the AD...
That's critical to all this.
Himself, he was on the scene immediately with some parents, including Max Gilpin's father, and they were the group. No coaches were involved in loading Max Gilpin onto the gator and taking him over to the water station. As for the equipment these kids were wearing, I can tell you, because it is, you know, discussed at length in the deposition of the athletic director. Max Gilpin had no shirt on. He had football pants, socks, and cleats. And I can be so specific, Rick, as to tell you when they brought him over to the gator, the athletic director testified that he told Max Gilpin's father to take his own son's cleats and socks off. So, no, he had no shirt. But understand the difference between this and a game to me. If all the allegations are to be believed, these kids ran wind sprints, or gassers as they're called down there, for between 30 and 45 minutes. And even if you're playing a football game in that kind of heat, in full equipment, at no point are you running, you know, at no point are you running that long, that hard. So
but the
could
kid
it be a problem? Absolutely. But this is a little different.
The kid wasn't wearing a helmet or shoulder pads, correct?
According to the testimony of the athletic director, that's correct.
Now let's get back, Steve from Princeton. Let's talk about this for a second. I mean, to me, this whole thing puts a real chilling effect. If I'm a high school football coach, we just don't know. It's a contact sport. Kids go through physicals, but physicals, you know, don't always catch everything with heart ailments or subtle problems with arrhythmias. Or if you say a kid gets hit, you know, with a helmet-to-helmet situation, these things do happen. And of course, it can be 95 degrees early when you have games in early September. I don't know how you. And again, trainers are all are trained to take care of the situations, but it's something you just can't prevent. I think the real question here is, you know, what was this high school football coach? Was he just negligent and not having enough things to preparation to make sure these things didn't happen?
Who knows? I mean, I think all of my colleagues work very hard at always self-examining, saying, are we doing enough to take care of our players? And we do a lot where I coach for heat relief. We have the cool mist vans during practice. We have a tent. We have ice. We have Gatorade. We have water. We have tons and tons of things, student managers and a trainer. And I think we do an awful lot, but the always question, am I doing enough?
Yeah, because the fact
am I missing?
Exactly.
I don't know.
Well, the thing is, and Steve, I'll let you go. Thank you. But the fact of the matter is, yeah, the question is, are you doing enough? You can have all these things, set up. You can do what you can to make sure the kids are well iced down, but a kid could still pass out just the way they're put together physically, and you never know. That's the problem here.